afternoon and welcome to this February 26, 2020 Council work session. And our first item is a work session on Parks and Rec System Development Charge Methodologies.
Hi. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm Carolyn Burke with the Parks and Open Space Division, and Deb Gallardi, our consultant, is here with us today, as well as Matt Rodriguez, the Public Works Director. And we are here today to talk about the Parks and Recreation SDC methodology update. In particular, we'll be talking about the public hearing testimony that we received, our responses to that, and looking for some direction for how to move forward. This on? There we go. So you may recall that this was triggered when we adopted a new system plan for Parks and Recreation along with the new project list. And the last time we updated our methodology was when we updated a new system plan, which was back in 2007. So it's been about 13 years since we updated our methodology. And we're going to dive right into what we heard at the public hearing. So we had 4 individuals testify at our hearing on January 21st. The types of feedback that we heard were an concern about the impact of a fee increase on affordable housing and a request to delay a fee increase for 2 years. We had heard concerns about the size of the administrative fee, which is about 9% currently. There was a desire to make sure that the projects that are funded through the Parks and Recreation bond measure are fully funded, those that have an SDC component to them. There was concern about the impact on multifamily housing and operational considerations for new parks. So we're going to go through those. And we thought we would start with those projects that are funded through the bond measure, but also have leveraged SDC funds. So, and this shows a list on the left of all of the projects in the bond measure where we are applying SDC funds. That was very intentional when we put the bond project list together. We wanted to maximize the benefits of that bond measure, and to do so, we're leveraging a lot of projects with our balance of SDC funds. So in order to ensure that those projects can move forward, we do recommend that we adopt the new project lists and components of the methodology that basically make those projects eligible for SDC funds. We can take this action regardless of what we do with a fee increase. So we can kind of separate those two things from one another. So the next issue we wanted to address was the impact on multifamily housing. And the multifamily housing rates did go up rather significantly in the proposal because of the occupancy rates in our larger multifamily units, so the 2+ bedrooms. So we looked at that and determined 2 strategies we could do to help minimize that impact. The first is just to eliminate the 3+ bedroom category. That category would have seen an increase of about 126%. And so we're just doing away with it. So now the maximum size category for multifamily units would be 2+ bedrooms. Then we looked at that and looked at a way to reduce those fees based on location. So looking at the proximity to frequent transit networks, and similar to what we did with the transportation SDC in order to achieve the goals around Envision Eugene, reducing fuel usage, really trying to incentivize multifamily along our key transit corridors. So this slide shows what that fee reduction would look like. It shows that at the bottom there that we would just strike the 3+ bedroom category, and that we would have a tiered 2+ bedroom category, 30% within a quarter mile of a frequent transit network, 20% within half a mile, and 10% everywhere else in the city. And this is how that affects this is kind of shows it embedded within the rest of our progressive residential rate structure. So this at the bottom shows our multifamily rates with this new proposal, and our single-family rates that show a progressive rate structure which incentivizes the smaller single-family units. And again, all of this is based on persons per household, and so the way that we identify what the rate should be, we look at how many people live in these different size units and go accordingly. We thought we would also show how this impacts, or how this compares to other Oregon cities. This includes some of the smaller communities like Veneta that were requested earlier, and you can see this is actually shows if we did a 2-year phasing program, which is one of the options, but the final rate is the most right blue bar, and you can see that where that puts us in comparison to other Oregon communities. So now let's talk about implementation options and what we'd like to do with the fee. After the hearing, we talked to a number of counselors. We've put together some options for your consideration. The first option is actually the original proposal. So this was what the public hearing was on, and it was a 2-year implementation, or 2-year phase-in with the full rate being realized in year 2. The advantages of that are that the bond projects are able to move forward. The small housing incentives can be implemented right out of the gate. We have predictability with our revenue coming in, as well as developers have predictability for what their future fees will be, and we will have funding to do some other priority 1 projects that are on our project list. Disadvantages is it's not particularly responsive to the testimony that we heard about delaying any fee increase. Option 2 would be a delayed implementation scenario. It's the same as the original proposal, but we just delay implementation for 2 years. So nothing happens for 2 years. At year 3, we begin that phase-in and realize the full fee in year 4. Again, advantages are that the bond projects can move forward. We have predictability in our future revenues and fees. It's responsive to the testimony that asked us to delay for 2 years. The disadvantages, however, are that those incentives that are embedded in the progressive rate structure can't take effect until we implement that rate structure. And so they wouldn't take effect until year 3. So years 1 and 2, we would still be charging the current rates, which in some cases are higher for the smaller ADUs than what we would be proposing under the new proposal. And there would be funding for other priority 1 projects, but it's limited. Option 3 is our phased implementation option, which basically starts the new rate structure right out of the gate, but with a longer phase-in period, 4 years. We would do 10% a year for the first 3, and then recognize the full rate fee, or full fee in year 4. This has the advantages of the bond projects moving forward, the small home incentives being available in year 1, the predictability. The disadvantages are that it's not as responsive to the testimony that we heard. And again, the priority 1 project would be limited as far as other non-bond projects. Okay, fourth, option is Status Quo, and this is a no fee increase scenario. So this is where we would just continue with what we are currently charging under the current rate structure, and we would revisit it during that 2-year time frame and come back potentially in year 3 with something else. The advantages of that are that we can still we can still meet our promises related to the bond project under this scenario. We would prioritize those bond projects, and we wouldn't do anything else besides that. It's very responsive to the testimony. The disadvantages are that those smaller home incentives would not go into effect, and we would have to see what the new plan would be. There wouldn't be very much predictability because we don't know what the new plan would be. And again, we wouldn't have funding for any other high priority projects. So this is all of those examples at a glance. And we just wanted to try to make it easy to see how they stack up against each other. We were recommending the option 1 or option 3 because we're trying to balance those goals of Envision Eugene and the Parks and Recreation System Plan and allow for those small home incentives to go into effect immediately. And we have a couple other recommendations that I was going to ask Matt to talk about.
Thank you. So yeah, as Carolyn said, just 2 more things that we wanted to hit on. The first one, the SDC Admin Fee, relates to the first motion that you'll see on the packet. There was a question at the last work session on the Parks and Rec SDC about the admin fee, why it was at 9%, what we use it for. So I wanted to address that, talk about very briefly how we got there and where we think we can go from there. So that fee is used for what you'd expect it to be, admin of SDCs, but that includes 2 FTE in Public Works, half an FTE in Planning and Development that do SDC administration and plan review. We also use it for bank service fees, which is basically the credit card charges we have when someone comes and pays their SDC, which is about 3% of the total. Legal services and contractual services. How we got to 9% in 2008 with the economic downturn, we saw a pretty significant reduction in construction. The fund was not viable in the way it was set up at the time. We started a conversation with council and a resolution was passed to move it to 9% to increase the revenue collection. At the same time after that, we also made moves to reduce the expenditures by reducing the amount of FTE in that fund. So that's how we got to 9%, basically because of the rate of development and the changes that we made in the expenditures over the years. We now have a healthy balance available in that fund, and looking out over the next 6-year forecast, we believe we can take it down to 5% and still have enough to account for a downturn that could occur at some point. So you'll see that as the first motion, which is a motion to reduce the SDC admin fee from 9% to 5%. And then the second item, since we just had the conversation about ADU incentives, which included looking at SDCs, was just to briefly look at the landscape of SDCs and how we have reductions or not for ADUs. So with the transportation SDC that was recently adopted, the fee is about half that for a single family home. If you look at this, on the left is ADUs, on the far right, we have a single family home, just really as a comparison of fees. So the fee outright for transportation is about half of that for a 1,500 square foot single family home. But council also adopted a 100% fee reduction with a $40,000 cap. So far in that program, we have not gotten near to using that $40,000 cap, and that rolls over year to year. So we're billing a bigger balance to support implementation of ADUs. Parks SDC is the second line that just shows the difference between the current rate and the proposed rate. The current rate for ADUs is about $800 less than a single family home. Stormwater SDCs, there is a break at 1,000 square feet. If you're under, it's 427. If you're over 1,000 square feet, it's 688. So there's a little bit of scale there for size. Local wastewater has a base fee and then a per square foot fee. So the larger the building, the larger the SDC, so it scales. Regional wastewater, MWMC actually approved a 14% reduction for homes under 800 square feet, which does, work for ADUs because of the description. That basically takes that rate down to what a multifamily unit would be. That is a program that is authorized through July 1st, 2020 with a $100,000 cap. There's still room within that cap as I understand it. And then finally, eWeb, you'll see that they actually have a pretty significant reduction in their SDC fee for ADUs, about a 67% reduction compared to a small single-family home. So that's just a bit of context based on the conversation you had about ADUs, and I'll turn it back over to Carolyn.
Okay, last slide. Just talking about next steps. We're asking for direction on several of these topics that we've talked about today. Our plan is to take it back and develop the materials that are required for adoption, and that we would come to you after your break in April. So with that.
Okay, thank you. I've got Mike and Alan in the queue. Jump in. Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. That was well done. Could you put that last slide up with the numbers on it, please?
That one?
Yeah, the interesting thing to me, the stormwater SDC, both it's discounted for ADUs versus single-family homes, but remind me again what that pays for?
So it's really, just to be clear, it's at 1,000 square feet. If you're under 1,000 square feet, it's 427. If you're over 1,000 square feet, it goes up to 688. But that's stormwater, it's infrastructure. So it's stormwater infrastructure to serve new development.
Doesn't our code, I mean, if not by the letter of the law, practically require people to deal with stormwater on site?
So there's stormwater quality currently that you're required to handle on site, and if you're over, I think it's 500 feet in the South Hills, you are required to have some detention of flow, but you still are using a pipe system predominantly to get rid of stormwater. The SDC really pays for the increment in the sizing of the system above what is needed for your development. So if you need a certain size just to serve your development, but we need a larger pipe because there's other water coming into it, that's what the SDC is really paying.
I appreciate that you guys are with Parks, and I appreciate very much that you're doing your best to explain all of that in a meaningful way, both to us and those watching. I'm watching the director of our Home Builders Association respond, though, and I've talked to a lot of builders, and I understand that reasonably well, that many of them don't understand why they're paying that when a lot of what they're building is to deal with stormwater on site. And I wonder about that, and we can revisit that on another day, but I thought I'd point that out. I'm in favor of the fourth option, but I thought it was an interesting presentation that it seemed like an either-or with regard to the lowering or elimination or temporary suspension of SDCs for ADUs. Why can't we do both? Why can't we choose option 4 and then, for at least a temporary basis, suspend SDCs for ADUs in the same manner we did with transportation? Mm-hmm. Is there a reason we can't do that?
No, that is an option you could choose.
Okay, thank you very much. The other piece is this. The reason it's so important to me to do this is because a lot of this, I get why it seems like a natural thing to, okay, it's some kind of, middle of the road choice, a compromise to jack the fees on bigger homes and lower them on smaller homes. But the reality is, of the maybe 300 single-family homes that were permitted and built in our community, how many of them, I don't know if any of you know, are over 1,500 square feet last year? Because I'd bet you it's most of them, if not almost all of them.
So 2019, the numbers I have, 166. We're over
Good chunk of
1,500 square
them,
feet.
and if I
which is
could,
the majority.
it is the majority. My point is that about a year ago, as a lender, I helped some friends of mine they sold their home near City View and bought their dream home up Camp Creek. Okay? And their home on City View was a wonderful little place, but it was considerably smaller than the home that they moved into and did up there. My point is, a good, affordable home was made available by those folks who bought that next step in life of a larger home. And we're not building smaller homes. The only way they come available is when people are selling them to buy the other one. And if we're not going to build larger ones, that's going to stop. And it will mean even less affordable housing coming available to people. Can I have a second round, please, Mayor?
Yes, you may. Okay. All right, Alan.
Yeah, thank you for looking at and recommending a fee reduction. I guess your explanation made sense to me, and I support that. I also support the adoption of the proposed project list and components. I think that makes sense, too. On slide 9, which is the bar chart comparing the cities, I like that regardless, we're still in the bottom 2/3 of the comparative cities, or local cities in that case. Where's Portland on there? Portland's not on there.
It's a 4-year projection at today's dollars.
Correct.
I was just pointing out, it's a 4-year projection, but at today's dollars, right? So we're comparing to everybody else's today's rates with our 4-year rates. Does that make
They
sense?
could go up,
Yeah.
Correct.
and we would move to the left, which is always
Potentially.
a good thing to do. So where's Portland's not on there?
Portland isn't on there. They have a complicated system that doesn't fall into a chart very easily. We do have that information, though. I think I even have it with me.
It's on
Yeah,
the
if it-
right. It's definitely on the upper bounds. Yeah, yeah.
So the numbers that are up there, 42, 46, 6077, those don't correspond to the chart. I don't see those numbers on the charts anywhere.
That is
that like an
because,
average, or-
that is the average, yes.
The average of
Because
what?
the average single-family residential rate.
Oh, okay. Depending on square feet.
For big houses.
What is that average?
It's the average
have-
across all of these, right?
It's
Yes.
the average for,
Four
so it's
different.
this,
Put in the
Four
80s.
different,
if you didn't do a progressive,
Correct.
yeah.
okay. Based
Yep.
on history of where allocations for each of those size of homes. So it's a historic average of size.
It's what the census shows is the average for all single-family homes, which is the way you charge now. So it's not taking any of the class rates by the tiers. So it's based on 2.51 persons per household, whereas like the 1,500 to 3,000 square feet is based on 2.71. So it's in between the 800 to 1,500 square foot and the 1,500 to 3,000, just the way the average
on
works.
2.1.
Yeah,
So in the middle there, so
yeah.
yeah, between the
Exactly,
1,500 and
exactly.
those two. Okay, that makes sense to me. I like that the way this is set up, it incentivizes smaller homes, ADUs, and affordable housing. I support that. I also like that it incentivizes proximity to transportation corridors. I think that's another thing we're trying to encourage. So I like all those parts. I'm not that interested in delaying this too much. So I'd rather see this phased in over 2 years than 4 years, so I'll support option 1, which is a 2-year phase-in.
All right, Chris.
Thank you. Really good presentation. I appreciate your efforts to try to embody and recognize the public testimony and the concerns. For me, the real dilemma is I am in a conflict between two things I really want. I want to be able to develop and work on parks and recreation areas and have the money to do that. At the same time, I recognize our housing market is completely out of whack and needs some serious intervention in order to be able to get back on track. When I'm trying to weigh those two, and I know that's part of what you were trying to do, was say, is there a middle ground that can allow us to have at least some of both of those? And I think you've gotten a long way there. But if I were forced to choose, I probably, at least today and maybe for the short term, have to prioritize housing, because housing is the issue that is the greatest whacked out thing right now. And so I look at what you're proposing here, and Mike makes a really good point. We're not building smaller homes because we can't make them pencil out. And that's not your fault. Land costs, material costs, labor costs, they're all just driving it crazy. And so we could do our little bit here, and that's helpful. And we need to figure out ways to reduce those other costs as well. But we've got to figure out how to get more smaller, more affordable homes built. So I agree, we need to absolutely provide incentives for smaller, affordable housing. So in any one of these four options, that has to be something that's got to be in there. So whichever way we go, that's got to be there. With regard to the impacts on costs in other ways, I don't think the original proposal was going to be the best balance. And so I think I'm having to look at one of the other options. I'm not sure that status quo is really the ideal here. Even status quo with an adoption for affordable housing still, I don't think quite gets us there. So I'm between 2 and 3. I think if we were to look at either one of those, we have to make sure the affordable housing incentive is there, but I don't want to create too much of a burden on the housing market. And if we have to delay projects or phase projects or do whatever we need to do, I mean, I'm a huge supporter of parks, but right now, if I'm triaging the situation, the triage has got to be around affordable housing. And I'm not going to put that entire burden on you, because you don't deserve the entire burden of why we don't have affordable housing. But every little bit, you know, $1 here and $1 there, pretty soon it adds up to some serious money. And so I'm looking for the best path, either with option 2 or with option 3. What do we need to do to those to try to create maybe just as good a balance as we can?
Okay, Jennifer.
Thank you. Yeah, I think some of the stuff Chris is saying is resonating with me. It's like they're not quite right, but they're really close. I kind of was waffling between 2 and 3. I don't have a problem with delaying or you know, having a phased in, but I want to concentrate on the things we really want. You know, I don't see any reason to delay or reduce costs for expensive housing. I want to target those affordable units that are going to get us what we want. So I don't know the best way to build that into the plan, but I'm not sure we're quite there yet on these things. But yeah, like Mike said, I don't have a problem with delaying ADUs and other affordable units but I don't think all the way across the board. Like, I don't know that that's appropriate, I guess. I haven't quite worked it all out yet, though.
Greg.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Is there a way that we may be able to look at or create a 5th option? And what I mean by that is the home builders and realtors, you know, wanted us to hold off for 2 years. What if we said no increase year 1, 20% year 2, and then phased in from there? Could that be a possible compromise alternative to, you know, what we have here, kind of meshing those things together?
We had a conversation with Ed of the home builders yesterday, and an earlier conversation with you, looking at, you know, is there another one? I did prepare a slide in case that came up that might help us evaluate what option 5 could look like. Let me fly through here. Option 5, I'm calling it the hybrid. It feels like a combination of option 2 and option 3. So this would have no increase for year 1. The way that I had heard it and put it together was then it would be phased in over year 2, 3, and 4, so looking at a third of an increase each year after that, with the full fee in year 4. So it has many of those same advantages, but it does provide 1 year of no increase, which was an important point made by the home builders, that they would like just that one in order to allow them to play catch up a little bit. And the disadvantage I would point out is it would still, unless we took some other action, not allow that progressive rate structure to go into effect until year 2. So it's better than a 2-year delay, but it's not immediate. So just put that out there for your consideration.
Okay, anybody else? Emily, go for it.
Thanks. The 1/3 fee increase is, what's that on? What we have already now?
Correct.
Or the new, different things for different places?
So it would take the fee people are currently paying today, and then it would take, it would subtract, so we take the proposed fee, and we subtract out the, sorry, I don't know how to describe this. Yeah.
It's transitioning. It would transition to the new rate structure.
Yes, it would transition. In year 2, you would transition to the new rate structure, but you would only see 1/3 of the fee increase that would be realized. The decrease would actually go into effect in year 2, the full decrease. Yes.
So it's not just on what we're having now, it does take but how does it relate to this chart? We have these current rates and then proposed. Which one would this match up with?
Year 1, it would be the current rates.
Okay.
And then year 2, it
So
would.
this would be like option 1, but turned into 3 years?
It's kind of like, it's a hybrid between option 2 and option 3. So year 1, there would be no increase. Year 2, there would be, let's say, 1/3, I don't know what the percentage is. But we would be, in year 2, we would be transitioning to the new fee structure, but we would only see 1/3 of the fee increase. And so it's similar to option 2, except option 2 only takes 2 years. This would take 3 years.
1/3 of the new structure.
Correct. Thank you.
Where is the new structure? Which column is that?
Well, if you're looking at option 2 on your spreadsheet right now, the new structure would be in year 3, although those numbers are slightly off. It's not on your sheet because this was a late breaking option.
Between the phase-in with 2 years and 4 years, what's the advantage to the builders? Would be less money until 4 years? So from the builders,
Year 4, we're still seeing the full increase in year 4. The advantage is that this first year of implementation, there's no fee increase.
She's talking
Okay.
about option 3.
I'm a little
Not option
confused
5.
still.
Option are you talking about?
Well, they say the new fee schedule, and that's not on here. So all of these are based on 1/3 increase or no increase or 10%, but 10%, 20% of what?
So the final column in each one of these options is the full fee increase. So,
And they're the same for every single one.
yes.
So have we
yes.
already decided that's okay, that last column? Because they're all the same? Did we okay those changes?
It's something we're still deciding, but that is our proposal, that would be the proposed fee. And it's just a matter of how we transition to that proposed fee and implement it over a series of years.
And who figured out that proposed fee?
That was part of the methodology that it's,
So we dealt with that already?
yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Claire?
Thank you. Apologies for being late. And this is a complicated topic, but I did have the benefit of meeting with staff a couple of weeks ago to talk about the various options. And, you know, I suspect I'm saying some of the same things that other counselors already said about kind of grappling with, you know, wanting to support our parks development and honor our project list, but also recognizing the impact of these fees on the cost of building new housing and multifamily units. So I appreciate all of the various options that staff has brought to us to kind of give us some choices on how we do this. I do think, you know, getting to the point where we implement the full proposed new methodology, I think that's important. But I also think we need to be responsive to the other perspective in the community about relieving the pressure a little bit on the cost of developing housing. So I would actually support this fifth hybrid option. I think it's kind of encapsulates the best of all the other options and brings us to a final result without so much deference that I see in some of the other options and without a huge impact up front. So that would be the one that I would support.
Okay. Manager?
I just want to go back based on something Councilor Simple said. I just want to make sure we're being really clear and transparent. So one of the problems with these processes that go on for a long time is it goes on so long that we have to kind of keep revisiting it. So I just want to be clear. Right now, the middle column that says current rate, that is the current rate today under our existing methodology. We have not, what's happening today is you're choosing a methodology that will move us over to our final proposed rate. And unless you pick the status quo option, which haven't heard anyone say, that will be the fee. And that is something you'll be doing today. So we haven't already decided that. That's part of today's discussion. So other than the status quo option, that we're moving from the current rate to the proposed rate, and it's just a matter of whether we're going to do it over 1 year, 3 years, 4 years delay, but the math between the two is always going to be the same math between the two. But that's part of what you're deciding today.
So the more we delay it, the less total money.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Mike?
Sorry.
Oops, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I did suggest we leave it flat for
not
2
a
years,
lot.
but I understand. I said that because that's how I feel about it. And in previous discussions, I sensed, and I appreciate what you said very much. I sensed everybody's, or most people's desire to be sensitive to how this affects housing. And so, excellent. I'm willing to compromise too if it gets us to a place that it makes sense and actually protects housing to the degree possible. It actually impacts what the market is experiencing. Could you bring up the different communities staggered slide again? Thank you. So, excellent. Thank you for adding the local ones. What I wanted to do, though, was a different kind of comparison. I wanted to remove all of the other ones, and here's the reason. Because this says, essentially, there's only so many people who build homes in our community, right? There's only so many companies that build homes, and this is their choice. They can build homes in places where the costs are lower or higher. My whole point was local builders who build homes here don't choose between Lake Oswego and Eugene. They choose between Eugene and Veneta. They choose between Eugene and Springfield or Corvallis, or Creswell or Cottage Grove. So if you remove the out-of-market cities in this and go with something that looks like current or phased or anything else there, what you find is every other local city that a builder has a choice to build in is lower than us.
Anita.
Depending on which one you choose, And at what phase-in level, yes, Veneta is because they're starting to grow like crazy, but it doesn't have some of the others in there. My point is, we're still the most expensive option or something like it amongst the places where someone may choose to build a home. And the homes that are getting built are the larger ones, and people are moving up into those as they can afford them and making more affordable homes available. So that's how the market's actually working. My other question too was, this is a 20-year project list, right? So we're not building all of that tomorrow or next year or the year after that, right? It is also my understanding that another option was thought of very last minute by a couple of our planning commissioners. Our market has gone up 8% in value a year for like last 3 or 4 years at least, and most professionals in this industry will tell you that it probably will for the next 3 or 4 at least. Their suggestion was that perhaps we could phase this in over 10 years, 10% a year, so that it would match the marketplace, and that the SDCs go up just like the price of housing does, in very near percentage every year for the next 10. And I'd live with that kind of compromise if other counselors were interested in that.
Okay, good. Alan?
Yeah, you also have to have a sense of scale here. I mean, on how much this actually incentivizes houses. The difference between Eugene and Springfield, Willamette Lane is $500. That's not going to make a difference on locational decision by a builder. They're going to build where they have the land. But what does make a big difference, and probably it doesn't make any difference as long as you're in that bottom 2/3, but when you get up into the other areas, and so we're not only competing with local builders' choices of where to build, but we're also competing with people choosing to move where their houses cost, and those are our competitors. Bend and Corvallis and Westland and other places like that. So that's more of a comparison for me. But what does get really incentivized is the changes in rates. Could you go to the slide 2 more after this, I guess? Or 1 bullet before this, yeah. What changes is the lower end of the scale. And that actually makes a difference on those smaller scale houses. On a large scale house, on a $600,000 house, that doesn't make much difference, but on a small scale house, it really does, I think, start to get at an amount of money that makes a difference. So not to adopt this progressive kind of size ratio, I think would be a big mistake, because we wouldn't be incentivizing the lower end scale of the house, which tend to be the more affordable houses. So I really like that aspect of it. I think that actually incentivizes it. I don't think that the rest of it actually make much of a difference, because there's not a lot of money on this particular thing.
Okay. All right, I have 2 more, and then I want to have a process. So Chris and then Claire.
Thank you. Yeah, a couple of interests within the SDC conversation is the rate, the new rate structure. And then the other interest is how soon we phase it in terms of its impact on home building. I have a really high interest in getting this structure in place because I think it really encourages and incentivizes smaller square footage and smaller homes, more affordable homes. I'm not wanting to hurt the 3,000 square foot home, but if I'm having to, balance, I would rather favor the smaller homes and do anything I can to help get those smaller, more affordable homes able to be built. So I'm interested in getting this rate structure put in place. So the options that allow that rate structure to be able to get put in place, I'm actually in favor of. Now, in terms of how it gets phased in or how much time it takes, I'm intrigued by option 5 because you're now implementing that in a phased approach over 4 years. So you do get a real benefit the first year, and it only goes up 1/3 at the new structure the second year. So you've got after 2 years, it's only gone up 1/3 of the new structure. And so you've gotten a pretty good chunk of what the testimony was asking for, a significant chunk of what the testimony was asking for, but you still got the rate in place and you're still incentivizing. So I think as a balance, this hybrid option may actually be the way to go.
So just to be clear, option 5 doesn't put the rate structure in place until the second year.
Right, but it gets it in place.
Right.
Yeah.
It's vote, you don't have to vote again.
I don't have to vote again. But it puts the rate structure in place, but it puts it in the second year with only a third increase on that new structure. Got it.
Okay, Claire?
I just had a question, and on the administrative fee, so I see that you're proposing it be reduced from what's been a historic 9% to 5%. And so what's the impact? Is that reducing the increase in the fee, the overall rates? Is it giving us more revenue for the projects? How does that work out?
That's a great question. So basically, it reduces the overall SDC fee for kind of the average new home by $400 to $600.
Great, thank you.
Okay, I know Mike wants a third. Is that a quick one? Okay, go for it.
I just thought of another idea in this to try and create a compromise. And again, I'm only doing that because I'd like to see us get together, but this fifth option for me still comes in too fast. I know it does for builders from the conversations I've had. We're talking about this as if we balance the impact on this particular one of 5 SDCs between smaller homes and larger homes, that'll have an impact about what people build. It won't. It's a choice about whether they build in Eugene or otherwise. But certain builders build certain things, and they do it because that's where you can make money or where you can't. And so if it's not build it in Eugene, then it's go build it somewhere else. But that minor change on one of 5 SDCs isn't going to encourage people who build larger homes to build smaller ones. It doesn't work that way, and it won't. So I would live with the proposal of bringing this in over 10 years that I've heard some other folks came up with. But maybe we can use some or all of that 4% buy-off between the 9 and 5% administrative fee to entirely eliminate, or to the degree possible that dollar amount represents, eliminate SDCs on ADUs.
So I want to be clear, we're not collecting that anymore if we change from 9 to 4. So it's not funding that can be used for some other purpose. We're literally not charging that 4%.
Within the calculation was what I was talking about. Perhaps that created within the structure of what you'd already estimated with the new fee system to come in. If you don't charge that there, anyway.
Okay, I want to jump in just with a process thing because we have another session. My understanding is there's the first two, these first two possible motions, one about the fee structure, the second about adopting the proposed project list are sort of critical and time sensitive. And I'm sensing that we could probably do those two motions today. I'm not getting a sense from council that you've dialed in on which option package you're really ready for. Am I reading you right on that? So you're ready. Okay, so I'll get to you, Betty, in just a minute. I would like to put the motions on the table for those first two, and I will let you speak to it before we do that. And then we can talk about maybe needing another work session to come back on the options or not.
I think let's just see where we're at that, and I'll look to you, Matt, to see whether you want to have another work session on this or schedule a work session for the second item that we're bumping potentially.
Oh.
Okay. Betty, go for it.
Thank you. I was just going to agree with you that we should do 1 and 2, but even though this was very well explained, I met with the people, was very clear, I'm still thinking about it. So I think another postponing part of it would be a good idea. One thing I do think is that we should discourage large houses in the interest of climate control, but I think more time would be good.
So, I mean, we can, it's up to you. So you want to put
Just
can we, yeah.
real quick.
Okay.
I think there is a majority of folks that would
Okay.
support option 5, and I would support option 5 as a good compromise. My interest is in not delaying it too much, because parks are a competitive advantage that we have over other places for people to build and live here. And they're very important for quality of life and our competitive advantage when we look into the you can live anywhere kind of economy. Parks is a big part of that.
Okay.
As is the cost
We'll
of
have
housing.
the option of putting that on the table, but let's do the first two. Can we do the,
Am I
are you
still
ready?
in the
Oh,
queue
yeah, do you
for
need,
the
I'm
other
sorry,
things?
did I overlook you? I apologize. Go for it.
One comment is if people move from smaller houses to bigger houses, and then the smaller houses are available, what often happens is those smaller houses are torn down, and new construction, whether multiplex or single, is built, and that's more expensive for people to rent or buy. So I don't really buy into that argument. Of these 5 options, I don't, like, over the years, what are the totals? How much would we be losing for parks, and how much would the builders be incentivized for? Because in the long run, it's how much money we have every year, or how much money the builders have to be able to build. And I don't understand the difference between these 5 options for that.
That's a good question, and we have not quantified what the kind of lost revenue would be for the different phasing options. So I can't really.
I don't really see how I can decide without that, because that's really what changes, is how much the builders have to pay and how much parks gains or loses. And these different structures are all interesting and have some benefits some way, some benefits the other way, but what's the total cost or benefit? And if we don't know that, I would like to talk about it again in the future, because talking about it more today seems to just be, getting in the same place.
I just want to weigh in on that a little bit, because it's really, unless we have real certainty around how many houses get built and how much we're going to collect, it's really hard to say, this option means we collect this much and this option means we collect this much. I think what we're presenting to you is a methodology and fee structure that implements the system plan, priority 1 projects, as we've kind of been describing them. And really, the policy decision you're making here is, do you want to start collecting that money now, or do you want to give it a little bit of a delay to also balance it with the housing needs? And we'll still be able to, with any of the options, we'll be able to, if you pass the first 2 motions, implement the bond projects, get things moving. I don't think it's not a significant difference. It just kind of slows things down a little bit. It'll be very difficult to do that level of analysis with certainty.
Could we do it with just pick one, say, here's a guess of what's going to happen and what it would be for the different options? Because I know if we build more smaller or more bigger, but could we just do an average of how the different options would pan out?
We could do it based on last year's numbers, I guess.
Alan, quick
I just
one.
asked Matt,
187
how many are
permits.
there that we're really talking about? And it's 12 ADUs, 36, 800 to 1,500, 66, 1,500 to 2,080, 2,000, 3,000, and over 3,200. So that's or 20. So that's a total of about a little over 200. Minus the difference between all of these is in the tens of thousands of dollars. Ballpark. In fee changes. It's not a lot of money.
Then why are we even talking about it?
On individual.
We often do that. One time we spent 3 hours on $7,000 at the budget committee.
Okay, all right. I would like to move this forward. Can we put the first
Get A and B done.
A and B on the table,
10 years
please?
ago, we built 1,000 houses a year.
Move to direct the city manager to prepare for adoption a reduction in the SDC administrative fee from 9% to 5%.
Second?
All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Excellent. All right, that passes.
Move to direct the city manager to prepare for adoption the proposed project list and components of the proposed methodology to ensure funding for 2018 Parks and Recreation bond measure projects.
Second?
All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8?
No.
No, you're opposing.
I was
Okay.
anticipating the no.
Sorry. Okay, 7 up in support, 1 opposed. Okay. Now, in terms of the remaining options, if someone wants to put one on the table, they can, but we can also delay.
Mayor,
Yeah.
I'd like to move option 5.
Second?
Okay, a discussion, any further discussion? All in favor of option 5? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, opposed? 5, are you in favor or opposed? In favor, 6, okay, and opposed, 2, so that passes. Thank you very much.
One more.
One more, oh,
Yep.
sorry,
I
that's
want to
right.
do,
Excuse me?
if you want to make the adjustments to multifamily, you need to
Yes,
do.
right, okay,
D.
go for it.
Where's that? Motion D.
So yeah, it's on the flip side of the page here.
Oh, thanks. I move to direct the city to direct the city manager to prepare for adoption an SDC adjustment for large multifamily units that implement Envision Eugene and climate recovery goals.
Second.
All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, opposed, 1. Okay, that passes. Thank you very much. Thank you for walking us through that. That was really complicated and hard, and great to be there. Okay, thank you. Next up, e-scooters.
See any scooters for demos?
I know. There we go.
Oh. You asked, Alan.
See you guys a little later.
Yeah, I move that we temporarily adjourn.
You didn't bring enough for everyone?
One person at a time.
We can offer rides afterwards. Since we're waiting for Councilor.
Okay.
It's the neon underlighting that really makes it.
Kicking it off.
Really.
Sure.
You can just jump in.
Okay. Mayor and members of the City Council, my name is Rob Innerfeld, and I'm Transportation Planning Manager. I'm here with our intern Karen, who is a recent graduate of the UO Master's Program in Community Planning, and she's become sort of an expert on electric scooters, did her thesis on it, looked at other cities and how they roll them out, and has even spoken at conferences on electric scooters. So we're going to try to do an abbreviated version of our presentation for you, since we have a limited amount of time. Sorry?
And scooter owner?
Right, no, that scooter was lent to us by a company. There's a lot of companies that want to provide shared scooter services here in Eugene. So we're here today to provide information to inform your decision on whether to launch an e-scooter pilot program here in Eugene. To begin with, we'll take a step back from electric scooters and look more broadly at this term called micromobility devices, which have been there's lots of different kinds of devices I'm sure you've seen here in Eugene on our streets, and they're small, lightweight, and either human or electric powered. The term micromobility includes bikes, electric skateboards, electric skateboards, hoverboards, one wheels, and other things that we've seen. And these, they can be privately owned. People are using these devices in our community now, and people can buy them either through the mail or at stores in our community. They can also be provided through what we call shared micromobility, where a company will offer them for rent in our community. And so it's very similar to the bike share that we have here in Eugene. And typically the company would own, maintain, and operate a fleet of electric scooters that are made available for short-term rentals. And so a person wanting to use one of these devices would typically use a smartphone app to locate the device and unlock it. And then when they get to their destination, they would end their ride, and then it would be available for someone else to use. And the trips are typically paid for either on a per ride basis or a subscription service. So today we're specifically talking about electric scooters, and basically it's a kick scooter that's electrified. And over time, they've become safer, more robust. And you can see the example here compared to what you may have seen in some other communities, is that they're more durable devices and easier for people to use. In some cases now, they even have seats on them. I'm going to keep moving along. So these are what are not electric scooters, just some examples like mopeds, motorcycles, and gas-powered scooters. So why are we here talking about e-scooters? And they're really a great opportunity for us to be able to achieve goals that have been set by the City Council including through our adopted climate recovery ordinance, which has a goal of reducing fossil fuel used in our community by half from 2010 rates and to achieve that by 2030. And based on the data we have not been achieving those goals. And so e-scooters really provide an opportunity of what we call a first and last mile solution for people to get to public transportation. And also in other communities, surveys have found that between 25 and 40% of e-scooter riders are replacing a trip that would have been made in a motorized vehicle. One way to introduce e-scooters into our community is through a pilot program where one or more companies would be invited through a request for proposals process to provide shared e-scooters in Eugene for a set amount of time. During the pilot program, data would be collected and evaluated, and a final report would be issued at the end of the pilot to inform the decision of whether to move forward more permanently with shared e-scooters in our community. So next, Karen's going to talk about how we engage the community around some of the key elements of a shared scooter pilot.
Thank you, Rob. So although scooters present a great opportunity to achieve these city goals, we do recognize that there are concerns that have manifested in other cities and have been voiced by members of our community. To get a better understanding of those concerns and how to address them, we engaged in a public outreach campaign that involved an online survey and listening sessions with key stakeholder groups. Our survey received 541 responses, and it basically asked participants to identify and prioritize criteria for potentially selecting a scooter company in the future in the categories of safety, sustainability, and equity. We also engaged in conversations with partner agencies and other city departments, including Parks and Open Space, Eugene Police and Fire, LTD, the University of Oregon, and various groups that comprise of downtown operations. We have statements from both the university and LTD supporting the launch of a pilot program. LTD agrees that it would be a great way to incentivize and connect people to transportation, and the university has stated that it would be help them fulfill their goals of relieving stress on parking infrastructure by reducing the number of single occupancy vehicle trips that occur to campus. Our public outreach has also identified, as I said, those key prioritized selection criteria. We have them listed here. We can go into them in more depth later, but in the interest of moving this along. The reason that we engaged in such a robust public outreach campaign is because we realize that implementing a scooter pilot is not without its challenges. Through our outreach, we heard topics of concern that were about sidewalk riding, improperly parked scooters impeding access and mobility, the sustainability of scooters, and the safety of scooter riders themselves. Through research and with conversations with representatives from scooter companies and people from other cities that already have pilots in place, we were able to determine a set of best practices to address and alleviate those concerns. We can use technology like GPS and geofencing. Geofencing is setting up a digital fence around an area, and when a scooter crosses that fence, it would be triggered to respond. It could either slow down, slow to a stop, or start emitting warnings that tell the rider that they're engaging in improper behavior. We can also use a system of carrots and sticks to incentivize and disincentivize behaviors, much like how our current Peace Health bike share currently does. So if somebody improperly parks a scooter and somebody else comes along and sees it and they have a scooter account of their own and they park it properly, they can get a credit in their account. Whereas a stick would be that if somebody continues engaging in improper behavior, they would be issued a fine. To address parking specifically, we could create designated parking spots in highly trafficked areas like downtown, the university campus, and the West University Business District, as well as in our parks. We could also require that companies then also require that the users at the end of their ride take a picture of their parked scooter to verify that they have properly parked it. We can also use education and signage campaigns that include in-app tutorials and safety quizzes. This is especially important for first-time users. I find that if most incidents with scooters occur within the first 3 trips. So these scooter tutorials are very important in helping to alleviate that behavior. We could also, Santa Monica had a campaign called Know Before You Go, where they advertised the rules of the road. Portland used pamphlets that they attached to scooters. And Portland also did this great public service announcement campaign where they teamed up with Lime, a scooter company, and 2 disability advocacy groups from Washington State to create this video to communicate the importance of properly riding and parking your scooters to not impede and impose upon people in our community. And with that, I will turn it back to Rob.
If City Council supports the implementation of an e-scooter program, we recommend amending the city code to enable the pilot to occur. And the proposal is to amend Chapter 3 to define a new class of vehicle called a shared micro-mobility device in code. And we recommend this term instead of e-scooter or shared e-scooter so that the city is better positioned to keep up with the rapidly changing transportation landscape as new shared micro-mobility devices are continuing to be released. And the definition of this term in Chapter 3 would allow the city to regulate the businesses that operate such devices. And one other thing that we also want the council to consider is having fees that would pay for the city's administration and enforcement costs for having an e-scooter pilot in our community. That could also be added to Chapter 3, and the fees could be on a licensing fee for a company to be here or fees per ride, and there's or other ways that we could talk about. We also want to talk about shared use paths. So some of you may remember that several years ago, the City Council amended the code to allow electric bikes on shared use paths. And at that point, electric scooters weren't even a thing that we knew of or talked about or that even existed. And they're currently prohibited on our paths, as are other motorized devices, except for personal mobility devices like a motorized wheelchair. But as we know in the photo on the left, people are using them in our community. They're using them on our paths, and we don't really have the resources to enforce a ban on electric scooters on our shared use paths. So we're recommending that you consider amending the code to allow electric scooters on our shared use paths. And I may not have said it earlier, but by state law, electric scooters can only go 15 miles per hour, and electric bikes can go 20. And through our conversations with our partners, including Parks and Open Space, we have internal support to make this change with one caveat that I'll mention in a minute. So, and then in terms of, we know, however, that there are some concerns about just how different path users interact, even now in our path system between bike riders and dog walkers and skateboarders and everyone else who's out there. So we're planning to launch a shared use path etiquette campaign this year that would target all users of our paths. And the one other thing that we could do is to actually, if we have shared scooter devices in our community, use the geofencing technology that Karen mentioned earlier to actually have a lower speed on our shared use paths, or maybe in certain parts of our path system where there's more congestion, like in Skinner Butte Park, the new riverfront path, places like that. And that one idea would be to lower the speed in those areas from say 15 miles an hour to 12 miles an hour. So that's another option we want you to consider. And then in terms of potential next steps, if you support the implementation today of an e-scooter pilot program, our next steps would include beginning the process to amend the city code, issuing a request for proposals so that we could vet potential scooter operators. And we think that having 2 companies would make sense for a community of our size, and then also for comparison purposes. And the idea would be that the pilot program would run for 6 to 12 months, and then we would evaluate. And we would use the evaluation criteria established through the public engagement campaign that Karen presented to you. And now we're opening up for your discussion.
Oh, I have lots of people. So I've got Emily, then Alan, then Betty, then Chris, then Mike. Oh, I've got everybody. I'm just going to go around the table. Jennifer, Greg, and Claire. I just want to, but I'm going to start, I just want to ask one quick question, which is, can you define what a shared use path is versus a bike lane versus a sidewalk?
Sure. So shared use paths are typically like 10 to 12 feet wide in Eugene. They're usually in their own right of way, but sometimes they're adjacent to streets. And so that's where there could be some confusion, where we do designate them on our bike map, And so I'll give you a couple of examples where we have them adjacent to streets. So the best example, I think, is Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, where there's a wide path on either side of the street. Also on both sides of Coburg Road, from Oakaway Road to the Ferry Street Bridge. So we would call those side paths.
Okay, thank you. All right, Emily, Alan, Betty, Chris, first four.
Thank you very much. I first saw scooters in LA at the National League of Cities conference over a year ago, and I was really intrigued by them. I didn't get to ride one, but I thought they looked pretty fun, and I like that you could get to buses on them and less cars. And then I was in the Sunday Streets Parade, and I got hit by one. And I hit the pavement really hard. I am just finally getting better, and it's 5 months. I still need, my hips adjusted. I had to drive my car, which I hadn't done in 2.5 years of working here. So I'm really concerned about the safety. And one thing I really don't want is them on the sidewalks. I think bicycles on the sidewalks are already scary enough. Pedestrians go at a different pace than bikes and scooters, and I think we need to respect that. We have young kids, we have old people, I'm getting older, and I don't want to be hit by a scooter again. And then I have just some smaller questions. If we're going to change our code for shared micromobility, if you own one, do you have to follow the same rules, or is it only for shared?
Well, a couple of things. In case we didn't make it clear, electric scooters are prohibited in sidewalks in the entire state.
Okay, thank you.
So there's a challenge of just making sure that users are aware of that, and Karen talked about some of the education for that. The defining it in Chapter 3 of the code would just be for the purposes of shared. That would not affect people's individual use of electric scooters. So the only thing that we discussed that would affect the individual use is whether or not they're allowed on our shared use paths.
So shared use ones wouldn't be, but private ones would be?
On which?
The shared paths.
There are currently no electric scooters are allowed on our shared use paths, including the riverfront path.
So we just allow shared ones on and not private ones?
If you were to amend the code to allow scooters on shared use paths, that would be for all electric scooters.
Okay, great, thank you. Of the different models, I'd like to have a bunch of them at least, if we have to do this, with seats and baskets, because not everybody is a good skateboard rider. And if I want to go buy a gallon of milk, I got to put it in a backpack, which is going to change my balance and my, bottom heaviness. So I'm concerned about the usefulness and, again, the safety without a seat or a basket. I'm already concerned about helmets. We have a Vision Zero goal, and yet we don't require helmets. And that just makes no sense to me. I think we should have helmets on bikes, and certainly on these. And then, like the shared bikes, there's a cost to them, so where's the equity? I want free buses. How are we going to make this equitable? And then the ability to ride it. There's only a certain age group that's really going to be comfortable on these things. And why do you need, if there's a license was listed on one of those pages, do we need a license to ride a micro bike? It was on there. I guess that's it. So if where are we supposed to ride them besides the shared use paths? On the streets?
So on streets, I can't recall in state law, are they allowed only?
Streets under 25 miles an hour.
Or in a bike lane.
Or in a
So a
bike
bike lane on any street or in the travel lane on a street of 25. By state law, you are required to wear a helmet, and someone of any age is required to wear a helmet when they're using an electric scooter, but not for a bicycle. Bicycle helmet laws only apply to kids 16 and under. And we would, when we do our request for proposals, we would really look for companies to propose their own solutions for how to encourage helmet use by scooter riders, and then that would be one of the criteria that we judge them on. And we also really like the idea of seated scooters too, of being part of the mix for the reasons that you articulated.
Thank you. I have really mixed feelings about it, so I guess a trial, but I'm scared of them now.
And one last thing is that we really would favor plans for low-income people and the equity issues that you raised. We just didn't have time to get into that today.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Alan.
Yeah, I've used scooters in 2 different cities recently, Washington, D.C. and San Diego, and I found them fun, safe, useful, and really easy to use with a phone app. You just walk up and use your Lyft phone app or download a Lime app, and it happens really quickly and it's easy to do. I definitely agree they can be an important tool for reducing greenhouse gas reductions. I didn't quite catch the stat that you said, Rob, which was the last mile, the percentage of trips that would be offset auto trips by having access to this kind of mobility.
In other cities, they found that 25 to 40% of scooter trips, based on the surveys of riders, where people otherwise would have used a car.
So that gets you to the reduction in greenhouse gases, and with it being electric versus fossil fuel. I definitely, I think they also can increase people's mobility and time that they travel. I think the problems are parking, sidewalks, and speed. And in San Diego, they had designated, there's a slide where they had pictures of designated spots where you have to park them. In San Diego, vast majority of them were parked in those spots. In Washington, D.C., they didn't have that. They were everywhere. So I definitely think that's a good idea from my experience. I think using technology to deal with the restrictions, enforcement, and safety, along with the education process, will help a lot. It knows where it is, and it knows that it's where it is from a GPS, and it can tell whether if it's on the sidewalk or not. So you can, and when you're parking it, and fine people for parking it in the wrong spot, and they don't have to do that once or twice, and then they get it. And so I think that the technology is so advanced now that they can become, we can restrict how they get used in terms of speed and where. So I think that, and if we do the parking right, we can get that done. So I'm a yes to the pilot and yes to the fees, and I support both motions.
Okay. Betty.
Okay, I agree with Alan up to a point. The problems are parking and sidewalks and speed, and I don't see a solution. I don't remember that we approved electric bikes, and they are hazardous. They're hazardous on the river bike path, and in Amazon Park, they're hazardous to pedestrians and to people on regular bicycles. And I think they would be, in Portland, I have seen them. They're all over the place, at least they were last summer, and it was frightening to walk on the sidewalks there. And I don't know how you can keep them from being on the sidewalks. Our streets aren't built to have scooters, have lanes for scooters and lanes for bikes and lanes for cars and buses and all those things. I think they will be a hazard. I can see it's going to pass. I can feel that. But I think it is wrong. I think it's hazardous to pedestrians and to people who want to ride regular bikes for exercise, which is, I think, something we want to foster too, is people being physically fit. And I don't think you get physically fit standing on a scooter. Maybe you do. Your nerves probably get exercise, and other people's nerves.
Your nerves get exercise.
The heart, in other words, will get exercise from beating fast. And parking, I think, would be you talked about the university. It's already hard to park your bike there, and certainly almost impossible to park a car. Some people do, obviously. But where are people going to park? If they take them to the university, where are they going to park them? And I can see people who otherwise might walk or ride a regular bike thinking it's fun to ride a scooter and riding them all over. But mainly I think they're hazardous to, not probably to the person riding, but mainly to other people. Thank you.
Okay, Chris.
Yeah, an interesting discussion. For me, the two factors are the inherent device itself. Is it dangerous? Is there a liability in the actual physical device? And then there's the person riding it, the person driving it. And I'm actually not that concerned about the actual device itself. They've been around for a while, and I'm not really worried about the scooter itself. So I'm focused in on the rider. And as I've liked to say in the past, there's a lot of people who exhibit butthead behavior. People in cars, people on bicycles, people running red lights. So butthead behavior is not exclusive to just scooters. Anybody can do it. So I want to figure out a way that we can ensure that if somebody's going to get on a scooter, they're going to be regulated and managed. And that's, for me, the reason why I would support a pilot, to see if we can put in place controls to manage butthead behavior. And to make sure that people don't just drop scooters wherever they want to, ride them on the sidewalk. I don't care what your rules are. I'm an Oregonian. You can't tell me what to do. I need to know what mechanisms we can put in place to ensure that people don't get hit with scooters, that scooters don't ride wherever people feel like it, all the horror stories I've heard in other cities. To me, that would be the purpose of the pilot, to say, is it possible to control the rider to ensure that they ride in an appropriate, safe manner? And whether geofencing, I think geofencing is great. It operates at my Fred Meyer. You take that cart too far away and that cart locks up. So I think it's a great system to have. I think fines for people who abuse the scooter use, I think, is a great idea. I just want to know, and it doesn't have to be long. I mean, people probably aren't going to do it in the middle of winter, so maybe even a 6 or 8 month program might be long enough to get a sense of what's going to work. Can we put in place sufficient safeguards to ensure that they're not all like Alan? Alan is probably a great scooter rider, but there's a lot of people who aren't. And I want to make sure we have sufficient safeguards in place to ensure that those people don't create a lot of liabilities for the rest of us.
And the pilot rules have to have butthead behavior in them.
Right, really, we need that language.
Exactly, even the signs.
Mike?
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Chris's notion. I actually would go farther to say butthead behavior is a, religion in our community, really. So, in so many ways. It's really interesting to me that both of the large concerns that have been raised are the conflict between the scooter and a pedestrian. I'm not anywhere near as concerned with the intersection of scooter and pedestrian as I am with scooter and car. I mean, it probably hurt like heck to get run down by a scooter. And that's going to leave somebody with a lot of bumps and bruises and maybe even broken bones. But you run one of those into a car that's coming down on a car lane and people are going to be dead. So my perspective is I'm fine with private ownership being able to ride them on pathways and on bike lanes. I would never want to see electric scooters driving in car lanes and lanes of the road. Ever. I think that's really dumb and dangerous. And I'm not sure whether or not I would want to see us, with all of the financial needs we have, needing to sponsor buy a bunch of scooters so people can rent them program. I don't think as much fun as that would be and as much as that would serve many goals, and those are all good things. But I think there's an awful lot of financial needs our community have that we have to focus on before we're able to buy scooters for people to rent. I don't think that's a good idea. But if it were possible for individuals to buy them and ride them, I'd do what I could and would be in favor of the idea of making our code sufficient so that they could do so in bike lanes. And I could see where the conflict on sidewalks isn't a good idea, but in some cases there would be little choice where bike lanes don't exist, and they certainly shouldn't be on streets. So it would be interesting to see how that code comes out, I suppose. But the city buying them and renting them out, I would absolutely oppose, because we really can't afford to be doing something that, although well-intentioned and probably cool, we just went through a whole series of things that we have to charge money for, and we're causing a housing crisis in our community because we have to pay for the parks, but we can afford to provide scooters for people to ride. That doesn't make any sense to most folks. So Thanks.
You want to address that?
Yeah, I just want to clarify.
I don't want to debate with you, though,
I'm
if you're
not
about to
debating. I'm just
oppose
clarifying that-
what I just said.
I'm not opposing. I'm just clarifying that the city would not, the proposal would not be for the city to pay for any scooters. Companies want to come here and offer shared scooter services to our community, and there would be no charge to the city. And that the idea of the fee, too, would be to fully cover the city's costs.
Forgive me. I think that would be a good idea. I didn't hear that properly, and I'm sorry. I didn't mean to jump at you over that. So.
Apologize, it wasn't more clear.
All right, Jennifer.
Thank you, and thank you for clarifying that. That is important to me as well, to see where that funding is coming from. One of the things I like about the bike share program is that it's self-sufficient, and so, yeah. So, sorry, I'm out of line with my notes, so I'm a little off. Okay, so I had a chance to talk to staff this morning because, to be perfectly honest, I've been thinking about this and I had quite a few concerns. And they were very helpful to be able to talk about each one and relevant data. They even brought some additional concerns I hadn't considered, and we talked about the advantages and disadvantages. But in the end, I think that a pilot program is worth the effort to go into and to see. I think that 6 months might be a little short. I'd like to see, because I think there's going to be an adjustment in behavior as we go through time, and I want to see like how people adjust and are they able to, follow the rules that we want them to and learn what proper behavior is. And I'm not sure 6 months is quite long enough to do that. I assume, you didn't actually say it, I don't think, but I assume the location of the pilot would be downtown.
Sorry that we didn't address that. I mean, ideally, we'd love to see this city-wide because there's people in all different neighborhoods who would like more transportation options.
I just said that.
So, and I know, one of the issues that we'll be talking about in next month, or actually in April, is the Transit Tomorrow with LTD, and there could be some changes to their neighborhood coverage. So really, this is about giving people additional transportation options. Part of the RFP process with scooter companies is where are they willing to provide the services, because they're also looking to make money doing it. So I think there's a little bit of a tension there, but we could prioritize certain neighborhoods as part of the RFP. We could also, from an equity perspective, ensure that scooters are offered in some of our lower income neighborhoods.
Yeah, you mentioned there was a low income program you're going to wrap into the scooters. Is that also available for the bike share, do you know?
There is a program that has not been marketed through the bike share where people can get a discounted rate if they're SNAP participants. And so that's something we've been wanting to work more closely with Peace Health Rides on, is promoting that. To be honest, like with scooters and the fact that they use generally smartphone apps, it's easier to introduce discount programs for low-income riders.
Integrated into the application.
It's in technology, yeah.
Right. Okay. Okay. So one of my concerns, I think you hit on it, is that, like we've seen with the bike share, which I am a huge supporter of, and I know initially I had concerns. People had concerns, a lot of the same concerns as with the scooters, actually, right? That people would leave them everywhere, no one was going to use them. That hasn't happened. They've been very successful. But we also have not seen an expansion of that program. So I realize staff was able to talk to me this morning about some of the issues that they're the real issues that they're dealing with, and it's not just that they're not interested, but I want to make sure that these things are great, but if they're only downtown and in the university area, they're only great for a certain, group of people. And I just want to make sure we have plans integrated into, if they are successful, where can we put these in other areas where there's high density? Like I could see in my area along Coburg, up at Crescent Village, the people that are going short distances or a bike, to run to Safeway, to run to Market of Choice or whatever would be very useful. And that these don't just get stuck in the pilot phase where we just keep them in one area. But it sounds like you guys are on top of that, so I could support a pilot program.
Greg.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I have some of the same concerns as Betty and Emily with regard to this. I was in Washington, D.C. recently and witnessed an accident with an e-scooter and a wheelchair. And this scooter was going downhill, so I don't know how fast it was going, but I knew that it was gaining speed, and it just smacked into the wheelchair. This woman went one way, the scooter rider went the other way. And I also witnessed scooters being left in bushes, scooters being left in all kinds of places there that I thought were more than inappropriate. Also, there have been issues that I started researching this. How many cities have banned e-scooters? There's a number of cities that have banned e-scooters now because of the safety issues.
Do you know?
And this is not just in the United States, this is globally.
I'm not aware. I don't think we know of what the answer to that is. I can tell you I don't know that we could in Eugene ban them because they're allowed by state law, but I don't know if that we'd be able to create our own code to ban any private scooters on our
We
streets.
could prohibit the shared use programs, but as far as individuals buying and using them, we can regulate where they can be, and essentially make it more difficult for them to be useful here, but I don't know, banning them altogether. I think we could take actions that would result in that.
I think it was the shared use scooters that were
Oh, for sure.
banned.
There are definitely, I mean, I guess originally you probably heard some of these companies were just dropping these scooters off in cities with no invite, and now they're behaving better, and they will only go in where they're invited. So there's definitely cities that have chosen not to have shared e-scooters, for sure.
Yeah, because I know that there's two big companies, Lime and another one, that are, really pushing hard on this, and both of them made $1 billion so far. I'm really hesitant to support a pilot because of those safety issues and those concerns. And, we already have enough problems with, as Mike said, or as Chris said, butthead behavior. And I've seen that there are some other things online where, people have put their kids on scooters and ridden with them, which is also dangerous. There's no helmet requirement in DC. I think that if we do this, we have to have a helmet requirement. I think there's a lot of problems with this that have yet to be worked out, and that we really need to learn from some of the mistakes that other cities have made in letting this, move forward. It's kind of scary for me because, a lot of people will not ride in the bike lanes. They will ride on the sidewalks. They will do things that are dangerous and inappropriate, just like bicycle riders do. But there's a different effect from a bicycle hitting you than a motorized device hitting you at a higher rate of speed.
Claire,
Should we do a motion to extend?
why don't you go ahead and ask your question? And then
Okay, well, I have a few comments too. So can you speak a little bit more how the limiting technology works, that, if you went on a sidewalk when you weren't supposed to, or a street that you weren't allowed to, how does that limiting technology operate?
So my understanding is that the geofencing is not accurate enough to tell whether you're on a sidewalk or a street right next to it. That is a level of development they're not to yet. But when you think of things like our most of our shared use paths, which are along, the river, along waterways, if you want to slow scooters in those areas, it's pretty easy to distinguish that. I think there's danger in how you would treat scooters on streets they're not supposed to be on, because if they're actually trying to turn onto that street and you cut it, then that might be worse than actually having them go on that street even though they're not supposed to, but at a way they would expect to navigate it.
So it works through GPS location identification?
That is correct.
It's GPS. Where the scooter is physically.
Yep.
So I would support us trying the pilot. I think we're in a position to adopt a program that avoids many of the pitfalls that other cities have experienced since they did them first. And we can incorporate, the best practices that those programs have adopted and hopefully avoid the worst hazards and the worst fears. I do think we need to be extremely mindful of our residents who have mobility impairments. And I do have a little critique on your demographics. You analyze the demographics of the pronouns people use, which I'm not sure how relevant that is to whether they want an e-scooter pilot or not, but you didn't give us demographics on how many of the people we spoke with have a mobility impairment. I did see that one of your focus groups was organized through Lane Independent Living Alliance, which is a disability advocacy organization. So I know you got direct feedback from some folks with mobility impairments, and I do appreciate getting the detailed list of people who were surveyed. That's very, very helpful. But I support the idea of a pilot because I do see it as a potential way, potentially a viable strategy to help us with our climate recovery goals, and we're falling woefully short of our goal to get people out of their cars. And I know our staff who are before us now are very thoughtful and strategic in how they think about the work that we're trying to do on this front. So I have a lot of faith that what you're presenting to us, is what you believe will play out. I do think the pilot should be citywide as much as possible. I really think limiting it to downtown and the University District is not going to give us a good sense of how other people out in Bethel, out in Train Song are going to use this technology should we expand it. So I think we need to test it out in other parts of the city as well. I think Santa Clara also has some potential there around the commercial district. So thank you.
Okay, we are over. I have one more comment, and we have two motions. So I would like a motion to extend.
Move to extend 10 minutes.
Second.
All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, great. Okay, so Betty, one more comment?
Yes, first, a 6-month pilot's long enough to terrorize a lot of people. And I think it's too long. I don't think we should do it at all. It is and on the bike path, what about people who like to ride bicycles? They'll be terrorized by having a scooter behind them or passing them.
Bikes.
I think, and also you talk about fines. If you want to have fine, who's going to give those fines if people misbehave, if they go on the sidewalks? I can show you 2 places easily, any time of day almost, when in a school zone, people are going 35 or 40 miles an hour when the sign says 20 miles an hour. And one place is on 30th as you come into town from the east, and the other is on Coburg Road north of Harlow, just 2 places I happen to be familiar with, where you will not see, if I slow down to 20, I'm really in danger of being rammed from the rear. It is not, the fines will not do it. And as a bicyclists deserved, I think what they might do is discourage some people from riding bicycles because it's dangerous, and they might discourage people who are accustomed to walking. As I was discouraged in Portland, I still had to walk to get back to where I'd been, but it was dangerous. And some people who otherwise might take a bus might decide it's more fun to take a scooter, and they're out terrorizing people. So it isn't necessarily people who would be driving cars who would use the scooters. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And can we put the first motion on the table?
I move to direct the city manager to bring back for council consideration an ordinance amending the code to allow the administrative establishment of a pilot program for licensing e-scooter share services in Eugene.
Second.
I have a comment.
Okay, comment and question. Yep, Emily, then Mike.
I had a bunch of people write me when this came up saying, please, please, please don't put this in. So I just want to address that I am going to vote for this, but I'm only going to vote for it because it is a pilot. And I hope it turns out wonderfully. Thank you.
Mike?
Never mind, I just read the answer to my question.
All right, good. All right, all in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Opposed? 2. All right, that passes. Thank you. And the next one?
I move to direct the city manager to bring back for council consideration an ordinance amending the code to allow e-scooters and other electric micro-mobility devices, e.g. e-skateboards, on shared use paths outside of East Alton Baker Park and Perens.
Second.
Yes, Mike.
So is it required then if we want to see that privately owned scooter be able to ride on city bike paths? Is a amendment required here to do that?
Yes,
Is there a reason you didn't put it forward in the suggestion?
because this applies to all e-scooter use, not just shared e-scooter use.
No, yeah, I think you answered the question wrong. You're asking, is this only allow for shared? It allows for all, private and shared.
Right. I'm asking, is there a reason, since we're amending the ordinance to make it okay for if I go down and buy an electric scooter, because I think they're cool, I can't right now ride it in Eugene? Is it, I think if we're going to do this, we should.
You would be able to with this.
But with this, it doesn't specifically say on bike paths in the city of Eugene. It just says on those particular.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So state law already right now allows scooters in bike lanes in streets that are less than 25 miles an hour. Our city code does not allow any electric device on shared use paths other than bikes, and it has an exclusion for East Alton Baker. This motion would allow.
I thought I heard him say that it doesn't allow them currently in bike paths on streets in Eugene. Or in bike lanes on streets of Eugene. The state law does not.
The state law already allows that.
Thank you. That's all I want to know.
Alan, did you need to?
The reason it says outside of East Alton Baker Park is because there's a motorized vehicle ban inside East.
Right, that's also known as the Willamette Natural Area. So if you ever decided you wanted to allow electric devices there would have to, I believe, there would have to be a plan amendment of the East Alton Baker Park plan, and there's an exception made for the path that goes from the Frohnmeyer Bridge to Autzen Stadium.
Right, so going from U of O to Autzen Stadium, that path has an exception. Okay, and would that be included here? That would be.
I believe so.
A terrible idea on a football game, but. Because you couldn't do it, but.
And you can't ride them on arterials.
Okay.
And collectors, right?
Except, no, if it's 25-mile-an-hour speed limit or lower, you can. If there's a bike lane on any street, you can ride it in the bike lane currently.
Right. But again, not on major thoroughfare type roads where somebody could be out in the lane, you have reason to say, hey, you shouldn't be there, get out of there.
So one of the things that we would plan to look at with the Chapter 5 code change, if there are certain streets in the city that have a speed limit under 25 where it would be dangerous to operate, like 6th and 7th downtown.
Mm-hmm.
So we would look at that as part of that proposed code change.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, ready, everybody? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Opposed? 2, and that passes. Thank you very much, and we are adjourned. Thank you.